Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And top of the morning to you. This is Newsline Live. We're broadcasting from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And as COVID-19 takes hold and as governments across the globe take hold and get to grips with the problem, we've got here with us two guests, Dr. Jairuan Bandara, who is the Director of the Medical Research Institute, and Dr. Aniruddha Pardenia, who is a consultant child neurologist and is also the president of the GMOA. Very good morning to you, doctors.
Very good morning.
Yes, indeed. Actually, we've got this about...
Yes, we had to promote this.
Indeed, we've got this about right over 3,000 years ago, isn't it? Because that can't do anymore.
Correct.
Good. Well spotted. That was said. Now then, can I ask you, Dr. Bandara, you're the director of the Medical Research Institute. In your view, are we going in the right path? Is the government taking the right steps?
Exactly, yes. Because we prepared to face this coronavirus incidents well ahead and well before the infection comes to our country.
Right.
So when it is there in China, so we believed that we trusted that because of most of the Chinese workers are working here, this can come to Sri Lanka. So when the first patient we find in the Chinese patient find in this country, we were prepared. I mean, the country prepared for testing and the screening and other surveillance measures. So actually that was the plan A prepared by the Presidential Task Force appointed by His Excellency the President and with the leadership of the Minister of Health. And we were planning to scan the temperature, fixed temperature scanners at the airport. And if we find somebody with fever, there was a very good plan to transfer them to IDH hospital.
Right.
Or else, if there is no fever, there was a good plan to, to monitor them at their own working place.
Right.
So that was the start. And after that also, the task force was frequently meeting at the ministry. And there were several committees, action committee and surveillance committee and reporting system and declaration forms. There many things we did. And we had several plans. If the numbers are escalating, what we are going to do.
Right.
If people come from the other countries, what we are going to do. Because everyone knows that the infection doesn't get any kind of treatment methodology other than managing the consequences at the hospitals. So everything were in line. So I strongly believe we have a good plan and we are going on the correct track.
Dr. Aniruddha Pardenia, Italy went from stage 1 to stage 6 in 3 weeks. What did they get wrong then? What did the Italians get wrong?
The problem is people will have to understand the technical concept behind this coronavirus. It is coming as a pandemic.
Right.
It's not coming from the indigenous system. It's coming from outside. So this actually spread in China was basically because now they had their New Year season and because of that there are a lot of gatherings and this is a very highly infectious disease.
Right.
So because of that they had the opportunity of spreading in a highway and to all regions. That is how this Wuhan issue came up to that level. So coming back to the technicality of it, how we should evaluate this kind of a public health emergency. This is an infectious disease. We call it under communicable disease. So there are 4 components.
Right.
Now the entry of portal is either airports or that harbors or so on and so forth. So that is number 1 point what we have to see. We have to put our system in place in order to prevent a disease coming into the country. The second thing is we can't, this global traveling we can't stop, and when they come, the second line is our health system. We have this quarantine system where quarantine they might escalate their level of delivery depending on the situation. So if they review, so they have the quarantine system. Then the third line is when they come to Sri Lanka, our public health team, especially the epidemiology unit of Sri Lanka, will have to get themselves mobilized, and they should issue the necessary guidelines and technical advice to the appropriate people to behave as it is coming and depending on studying the day-to-day situations. The fourth point is, if you contact this disease and if you get diseased, we have to get our curative system or the hospital system to function, and there is a unique feature here where you have to isolate and treat this patient.
Right.
So we have a IDH, this infectious disease hospital isolated, but here of course this disease that is the issue. Now this disease is a highly spreading disease, so, and because of that we have to develop our competencies in all other regions. So the expertise we have at the IDH will have to be expanded. So far the numbers we are still can manage, but now we are getting ready if it escalates to the other regions to
but what sort of capacity we talk about at the IDH?
IDH have so far almost all the SARS, MERS, all these pandemics in the past we could manage at the level of
so
IDH.
We got 100 beds, more than 100 beds, 200 beds?
No, it's not only you can't only, now every patient will, now there are ways and means of treating. Now this disease is, if you see the BBC video recently uploaded, 80% can be managed at home. This is just a upper respiratory tract infection. So the home quarantine is the process they follow, and even Singapore and all these places, they give telephone guidelines.
Like thousands of rules.
The thing is this, it depends on the numbers of the patients. So if it get escalated to 1,000 then we will be in a kind of a difficult situation. At the moment it's manageable, and
43 I'm being told.
Very few patients will go to the ICU care level or the ventilators and other care. So we are slowly expanding the care. At the moment we are in a position handling the situation, and another kind of about the 10-fold rise of the current situation we'll be able to manage, but if it goes to about 1,000-fold, then we'll be in trouble. So that is where
so what is the difference, you think? What happened in Italy then? Because
in Italy and China and other South Korea and other countries, I feel, and according to the evidences also, they started, all the preventive measures and treatment methodologies after they see many numbers of patients. Even China, according to the evidences, the literature, the informations, so they have got this infection late November. And until late December, they were not, putting their hand very much to control this disease. And on December 31st, they declared that there is infection like that, and WHO declared on January 1st week, 7th. So at that time, it was huge impact about this coronavirus infection in China. So we didn't do, that unsafe situation. We were well prepared. So when we find the first patient, we just activated what we planned. And we had plan A, B, C, D, and we activated plan A very first. And then, like Dr. Padania said, we took all 4 measures. And actually, in Sri Lanka, we have very good health surveillance system for each house, for your house and both of us, we have dedicated 2 medical personnel for a house, that is public health inspector and the public health midwife. So that system is strengthened during this, more precisely strengthened regarding during this season. Because of to control this infection. So that is where our strength is. So that is why I'm telling that we are well ahead of controlling this infection than the developed countries.
I'll ask you, as the president of a union, whether there is any traction. There's a lot of people who've contacted me and asked and expressed this thing that I'm about to ask you, and that is that the government appears to have acted with at least a touch of politics, bearing in mind that there's an election being called already, and they feel that the government have only felt a need to carry on with the nominations process and committed to holding the elections come what may. Whereas, according to the available information, it is the epidemiologists who should be in charge of that, who should say, look, we don't want anything, but we need to do this, that, and the other, because once in a way, it pays to listen to professionals. And so the accusation is that the government have acted irresponsibly in terms of that. Is there any traction in that?
I don't believe, because now the principles behind managing this kind of a pandemic is, number one, when the Wuhan incident took place in December last year, January itself, the health minister first and then the president himself sat in a kind of a task force. Now in this kind of situation, we have to have a studied approach. So, and there should be consultative and consensus process in the game. So he headed, because he has no election, he is already elected for another 5 years. So he got down the airport people, all 4 categories, as I told you, and tried to strengthen as much as possible. And very interestingly, as Dr. Jayaruwan Bandara said, we have a very well organized public health system. But on top of that, from his military knowledge, he got the Triforces also to join, and because of that, parallel to our surveillance program, there was Army intelligence also put their hands in, and that was basically handled in parallel. So because of that, we could trace the first patient very soon, and it was acted very nicely. And the contact tracing, now from a government side, there is a government responsibility to take studied move and studied decisions. At the same time, the public also now in this kind of a situation, as citizens, we also have social and other responsibilities in place.
Yes, but whilst you're saying that, I'm very concerned about the people, large number of people in this country who are basically daily paid.
Exactly. So therefore, as a president, he will have to balance the running of the day-to-day affairs of the country, especially now I am a neurologist, I run my clinics. Now, when my epilepsy patients can't get their drugs in place for 1 month, then that will be an issue. So how are we going to balance the normal sequence of events in the country, plus how are we going to prioritize the corona coming in? So what he did was, basically, we all got together and the airport was strengthened. Because earlier, when they come to Sri Lanka, there is a pilot declaration, passenger declaration, so on, and there are certain activity plans in the airport at the portal of entry. Then the visa procedure where you can ask the source airport and those things. So basically, those things were in place. Our quarantine medical officers, we act from the GMOA, we volunteered some of our doctors to join the quarantine team to be strengthened. And this, as he said, the ways to screen the disease, possible disease candidates who are coming to Sri Lanka, whether they are foreigners or Sri Lankans who are returning back to this country at the arrivals, the scanner, this thermal scanner, that is a very crude method, but at least that was in place.
Is that crude, really? I used to think that it was quite...
No, the scan, people think that it's a very, very high-tech commodity. It's basically detecting the temperature. So if you have a kind of a water bottle, hot water bottle, that will be picked up. So, but at least those are the techniques worldwide used. So those were in place. Starting point, and then there were handheld temperature measurements and all these things to be checked. So then we kept a surveillance until the first patient was detected, and all his contacts were traced. So that is the key point here. So that had to be done by the epidemiology unit. So they were guiding here, and I don't say we were people can have, there is a scope for development, but our system was in place. The president or the political leadership can guide a process, but technically we have to be sound and we have to run the show. And very importantly, unlike say the tsunami and all our public health emergencies and the national disasters in the past, the attitude of the people who are involved in handling this is a bit different here because of the publicity given on this Wuhan incident. People were scared of the people who are delivering care also had to look after themselves. They also should go home. So then they might give this disease to their loved ones. So this also had to be balanced. So therefore, we had to balance the process of contact tracing and handling the situation. We have to look into the country's normal sequence of events and day-to-day all these activities, plus the mobilizing of our healthcare workers and other people who should handle this patient while safeguarding themselves. So these are three major areas that we are handling. We had the consensus process, which was basically led by the president, and I always say that there's a scope for improvement, but I think compared to other countries, we had taken kind of a way ahead, like say Italy and other countries. Ultimately,
and on that note, let me remind you that you can send us your questions directly straight here into the studio. 0772 300 305, card coming up on your screen now. And we are in conversation with two doctors here. We have Dr. Jairuwan Bandara, who's the director of the Medical Research Institute, and of course Dr. Anuruddha Pardenia, who is the president of the GMOA. What does the Sri Lanka Medical Council have to say about all this? Are they all also, I know they're not here, but
Sri Lanka Medical Council has no role here because Sri Lanka, I am a council member there. Medical Council is to look after the standards of medical practice and the medical education. So there is no place here. Here is the Ministry of Health, which is accountable for the whole process of the quarantine, epidemiology and the treatment. Then the other accountability part lies on the part of the airport and their other immigration and that kind of their related...
It's fusing well. So I know one of you just referred to the military background you did. Is this another war which we are, in a way, we are sort of fortunate we've got a president who understands these things firsthand, having been the war-winning defense secretary. And I noticed that he's appointed the commander of the army to head this unit.
Actually, the command of the army, his involvement also had to be, in my point of view, we had done a commendable job because in the process of quarantine, when people are not complying voluntarily,
you needed somebody to force them to comply.
Force in the sense there are parliamentary acts. There is a quarantine act. There is a notification of disease act. Then there are those are written laws. Then there are this epidemiology has issued guidelines to the doctors and other healthcare workers how they should act.
So Sri Lanka really has everything in place. We've got the laws in place as well.
Yes, but it had to be tailor-made to the current situation. Like say, now even yesterday on home quarantining, there was a guideline issued by the epidemiology unit and that had to get disseminated and the doctors had to abide by or adhere to the principles which are being delivered on technical grounds based on the current situation. So that is how even the past epidemics when we were dealing, all these things were guided properly. So the same principle is running here. And then this process is first time we had to quarantine about 2,000 people. So unless we have the help of the law enforcing authority, the police and the army, now some people were, now even when they were taken to the quarantine institution and they have jumped at the driver and tried to kind of attack him. So that kind of situation the healthcare workers will not be able to cope with. So therefore the law enforcing authorities had given us a kind of good support. And the other important thing is, in this case, the most important thing is the surveillance, the cases, and because the case definition is daily changing. Now earlier, if you go back to January, our corona case definition to this country from a public health point of view was a person coming from Wuhan. Now then later on it expanded, people coming from Italy, Korea, and by yesterday the Australia, Malaysia. So the case definition got expanded. So based on that, our line of action had to be changed, especially at the level of airport. So this is where the dynamicity took place.
Now then, thank you for the several questions. Many of them are sort of remarkably similar. And that is, if you're feeling unwell and where do you go to check? Do you go run off to the private hospital or What?
Well, the symptoms are kind of common cold, like sore throat, maybe nasal block, sneezing, maybe sometimes associated with runny nose.
Yeah.
Those are common these days because these days, Dr. Padani will agree with us, with me. So these days there is a common cold is going on. So that doesn't mean that you have
So
got
where
corona.
should they go to check?
Well, the nearest hospital and one of a MBBS doctor.
Right.
They can discuss with that doctor. When doctor asks questions, they have to give in and out all the answers, correct answers, and true factors, true answers. Then the doctor will decide whether you have got corona or not. So by feeling you are unwell and you are not well, and the fever, maybe little cough, sore throat, nasal block, sneezing, maybe runny nose, that doesn't mean that you have got corona.
Right.
There has to be a contact history. That's what Dr. Padani correctly said. Earlier, we suspected people with corona, even with sore throat, if they have come from China or Wuhan, especially Wuhan. That on that basis, the government took place to the decision to quarantine that Chinese medical students. So, if somebody is having possible contact history, that of course that person will be admitted to one of the 17 hospitals dedicated to manage these corona patients.
Now, we are heavily dependent on tourism. Our tourism and leisure industry is huge. And obviously, those hotels and establishments are there to cater to the tourists, mainly, I suppose, to the foreign tourists. But how do you control these?
Yeah,
they travel all around the country.
Well, now I guess that's now well controlled, Dr. Padani.
Yeah.
Another thing, we have very good surveillance system, as we explained earlier. And there's a declaration form given by from the airport, not in the airport, maybe inside the flight also they give the declaration form where you have to mention everything regarding the passenger. That passenger has to mention everything, like the address in Sri Lanka, how long he is going to stay here, and from which country, what is the transit, and everything he will mention. That declaration form straight away goes to the the details will go to the epidemiology unit. There is they have used IT system to locate the places where this passenger or the visitor or traveler going in the country. So for each and every place, the medical officer of health in that area will be informed through epidemiology unit.
Right.
From medical officer of health, the public health inspector will visit those places and see, and they have been educated and knowledge to discuss with that visitor or foreigner or somebody, and find anything possible regarding this COVID-19 infection. If it is there, definitely that public health inspector will get action to take care of that person.
Are we having, one of the questions is, why were no Chinese nationals under observations according to today's Daily Mirror?
No, that's wrong.
That's wrong.
That's wrong. That's wrong. Because Chinese, actually, the declaration about the people from China is being done from the Chinese embassy as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Another thing, they are coming to this country to work in separate places.
Right.
We know those places, where those places are. And we have arranged from the epidemiology unit, there is a person daily visiting those places, even with medical officer.
Right.
And see whether they are developing kind of any symptoms.
I'm glad you're clarifying this, because this is...
The point there is now
quarantine.
Yes. When according to the case definition, Chinese are in the category of potential kind of disseminators. So the problem here is, whenever the foreigner comes, there is a quarantine program which is being helped by basically run by the army and in our with our hands in. But the Chinese are a category which they look after their quarantine under our surveillance. So that is the difference. All others we had to organize, because the Chinese embassy has put their inputs in an organizer place. So whoever comes from China will have to stay for 14 days of this so-called incubation period.
Where?
And then only at
Under
their own
under
premises.
their
Place.
place
Okay.
under our
And that is
surveillance.
happening very well, actually.
Right.
Yeah. Answer to one of the questions you raised.
Yeah.
There are three options for a person who is worried about their own health.
Yeah.
As Jairwan said,
Yeah.
basically this is upper respiratory tract infection which has fever, cough, shortness of breath, and then some kind of sore throat and headache with some body aches as it is some kind of a viral disease. But then again, your worry is whether you have corona or not. So you have three options. Number one is whether you are going to self-look after yourself. But even UK, which they adapt this acquiring control herd immunity program, and then in Singapore, who are depending on the GP system, both with this so-called developed systems also, they guide. They ask, if you are confident, you better get telephone conversation with your doctor and manage by saving both parties and the rest. So that is one option. The second option is, as you said, whether you go to the private sector. Third option is going to the government sector. So 4 out of 5, that is 80% of the people have will have, even if you have corona, will not go into a disastrous situation. They will come out.
Do we have a system that the public can phone up and talk to a
now we have
medical
started.
person?
We have started. Right. We have started hotline. We are not only just a medical.
How many people will handle
No, the
this?
thing is,
There are
there
five
is
numbers, Dr.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are numbers where you can contact. Rather than just a doctor, you can just get so-called experts.
Have you got those numbers with you now?
Well, at the moment I don't have, but I guess
that is read when you phone somebody.
Yeah.
Those numbers are coming to your phone from the Mobitel.
Okay, so that is your ring-in tone.
Yeah.
now.
315 is one number, I guess.
Okay, all right, good. So there you go. That's so there will be medical professionals at the end of the telephone line.
Of
course.
Not a student who's
No.
giving up some time.
It is actually under the
person.
consultants.
Right.
It is under the epidemiology unit, and it is been monitored, daily updated. Whatever the new knowledge is been updated, and they give guidance by safeguarding themselves. Also, if you feel that uncomfortable with the patient, they will immediately ask for you to join the health activities.
Sri Lanka is a pretty resilient country, and the people are ever so resilient. Do you think we're going to crack this one?
Of course, we
Pretty
hope
quickly?
so. Of course, we hope so. Because of that, I mean, the patients we have found are all patients who directly got contacted from either foreign person or foreign country, where the disease was there unsafely spreading. So, all those measures we have controlled. And even we found some patients, then more number of patients who are mainly from the centers where we put people for quarantine. So it has not started the community spread.
And this coronavirus appears to me to be a great equalizer, because no matter whether you are a high net worth individual, or whether you're a school leaver who's just got his first job, or whether you're jobless, as Facebook people write and say, no job company. Whether you're in a no job company or whether whatever, this thing is a great equalizer because it treats you the same.
Yes, correct. And one thing I want to highlight in this forum is, so it is person's responsibility to safeguard yourself.
Right.
So the corona spread to a person, and a person will get infected. If I touch the infected some material, maybe the sputum, maybe a saliva or something, secretions, and I touch my face with my hands. So that, of course, person has to look after. The better person to explain this thing is Dr. Paden here.
No, the thing is, the distinction here is not whether you are rich or poor. Whether you are rich in your immunity is what matters. Now, now you can see now even the so-called developed world and the developed countries are now basically, just imagine with all this development, if you can't allow you to go out of your home, if you can't have your education in place, if you can't go in a public transport,
Yes,
and
but
in
now
a
this is the
plane.
problem though, Dr. Pardenia. I was asked by somebody who lives in Britain whether the Sri Lankan government have got any plans to financial help to especially to small businesses and so on. My response instantly was that Britain is a $2.6 trillion economy, $2.6 trillion economy, and their chancellor, their finance minister, has announced a package to help fund the fight against this virus and the associated difficulties to businesses of £30 billion, which is only a little almost insignificant amount of their total size of the economy. Sri Lanka can't afford anything of the sort.
Now, this is where we have gone wrong, because we only analyze most of these activities from a economic point of view.
Right.
Now, that is why the so-called words, two concepts of the development and sustainable development.
Right.
Now, the development comes with the economy, but the sustainable development is economy, agriculture, your health, your environment, everything. So, the richness had to be appreciated from that spirit. So, when you put that in place, in Sri Lanka, we are rich in that way. In the sense, now we are a literate country. That is first thing. The second thing is the immunity. We have been, because I had a personal interest on studying all our references in the past, during the King's era, how immunity had been. And this is a country where you have a documented history for last 2,500 years. So I have been studying all these things and got to know during, before our colonial era, our immunity had been very high. So simply, no communicable diseases in record, no non-communicable disease in record. Currently with the so-called developed world, we all are facing cancers. Now the number of cancers in this country, there are 78 patients get registered every day. And if you have a cancer, now according to our leaflet also, a threat of corona will be higher than a normal person. Then the diabetes it's basically that come down to pediatric age room, and I have my neurology clinic at the Lady Regia Hospital. Next to me the diabetic clinic, and we had none in the past. 5 years ago, last year it was 124 diabetic patients less than 12 years. So we can run this show, our immunity. And if you have diabetes, you are a high-risk candidate for corona. So this communicable and non-communicable diseases run together. So it is time, and this is a good lesson for us to look after immunity. So how are you going to look after immunity? Number one, reduce your smoking. Now we asked to home quarantine. What are the principles of home quarantining? If you see the BBC video, I recommend you to see that. There are 5 steps the BBC suggests.
Just go up to www.bbc.co.uk and you can then follow the link from there onwards.
I will just tell the 5 things. They asked to reduce the visits and the visitors. Number 2, they asked to, if you have a cough, or if you have upper respiratory infection, to self-isolate in a room, ventilated room, well-ventilated room. Third thing is use either a separate toilet or use the toilet after the rest of your homemate. And fourth thing is, when you dispose things, put it in the safe way by putting 2 bags in place. And fifth thing is, when you are going to accommodate goods into your house, ask them to keep it in the doorstep and do online banking and online purchasing and all these in order to get them down without much more human contact. So those are 5 basic principles they have listed down. Now those are things we can do, but while we are going to be in home, you should not smoke, you should not use alcohol. All these things will bring down your immunity. Then good drinking water, and then food. What the WHO recommends is go for traditional food culture that will save your immunity. With all these agrochemicals, all these food additives and all these things will insult your immune system. Most of the diseases, say even the communicable diseases nowadays, the dengue. Dengue is basically immune related disease, though it is coming from outside. All other diseases we could manage, because from the viral point of view, we have only 2 options. One is to get the antivirals in place. We have only a couple of antivirals like acyclovir, ganciclovir and all. And then the other situation is the vaccination system. So those are the 2 kind of technology system where we can support you. But it is your responsibility to look after your immunity in place. Then very importantly, adequate sleep and rest. People don't believe in, people are having all these phones and all other technology, and you don't rest, you don't sleep adequately. So that has an impact on your immunity. And more importantly, in the past you very correctly suggested that we had certain other traditional methods to safeguard our immunity at home and ourselves.
Indeed.
Now, I read an article day before yesterday. Chinese government had issued to the press, when they handled their coronavirus, 80% of the traditional methods of treatment were used in them. So we have this, and then so I went to the Science and Technology Ministry and I got to know that our Kottamalli Venivelgata, there is a manuscript, they have studied this thing, and that has proven to improve the cell-mediated immunity to handle corona and so on and so forth. So therefore, it is our duty just not to confine ourselves to boost our immunity.
Yeah, we mustn't all just be sat in our do-nothing seat. We must get off the seat and do something about it.
Exactly.
When we're having a good time and when you're explaining things, time just flies. Dr. Pardeni, thank you very much for being on the program. Dr. Jairowan Bandara, thank you very much for your presence too. But I want to finish off not with a question which I've received from a member of the public, but I shall read it out to you entirely. I hope you haven't fixed it because I'm not ready before. This is not a question, but praise to all the authorities handling this medical emergency. For the first time, we are not scared, we are confident we can beat this and are proud of the systems in place, which are better than some of the first world countries. Credit to all media houses as well. Cheers on a great job being done. So thank you, and on behalf of the people, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that's the way it was on Newsline Live. Take care and have a great day ahead. God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.